My name is Quentin Blaine, and I'm the moderator of the school district. Have all voters registered with the supervisors of the checklist for this meeting? And if you did, should get a little packet of yes/no ballots. I think there's 3 of them. Are there any non-voters, non-residents of Plymouth in the audience? Could you please identify yourself by raising your hand? So everybody is a voter. That's good. The rules for running the meeting are contained in the town report at pages 113 through 115. If you have a copy of the town report, they're the usual rules. Please direct all questions through me. Don't start a question-answer dialogue with anyone if you can avoid that, please. And if you're going to speak to the meeting, please go to the microphone and state your name each time you're going to speak. So we will open the meeting with Article 1, reports of agents, auditors, committees, or officer. And Article 1 reads, to see what action the school district will take relative to the reports of agents, auditors, committees, and officers. I'd entertain a motion to accept the reports of agents, auditors, and committees.
The board moves to take Article 1 as stated.
Is that a motion to accept Article 1?
Yes.
The reports? And that's, Article 1 has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on Article 1? Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Is that here? I think we're getting a little feedback here. Maybe it'll disappear. Brings us to Article 2, Contingency Fund. To see if the school district will vote to establish a contingency fund in accordance with revised statutes annotated 198:4-B. Such contingency fund to meet the cost of unanticipated expenses that may arise during the year. And further, to see if the district will raise and appropriate the sum of $1,000 for such contingency fund. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion?
The board moves to accept Article 2 as stated.
Second? I'll second. Okay. Article 2 has been moved and seconded. Is there anybody in here who has access to these microphone things to see if they can stop the... Article 2 on contingency fund has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on Article 2? Thank you, Julie. Seeing no discussion, we'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 2 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Article 2 passes. Article 3, security upgrades. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $106,500 for the purpose of security upgrades to the building, $85,200 to come from the New Hampshire Public School Infrastructure Fund, $21,300 to come from taxation. The school board recommends. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to approve the motion as stated.
Is there a second? Article 3 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Please go to the microphone, state your name, and...
My name is Bonnie Sears, and I think I know a little bit about this, but I'm just wondering what security upgrades you're talking about exactly.
Okay. Is there somebody at the table that can speak to it, ma'am?
Sure. I'm Kyla Welch, the Assistant Superintendent. The upgrades are for new security cameras for the building. They're very outdated and not syncing up as appropriate for the past several years. So 80% is covered by a grant, 20% locally funded.
So if this doesn't go through, what exactly does that mean? I mean, what,
We stick with our original cameras.
and are they not working at all?
Not really. No, I could have John Francis, the facilities director, just add a little bit to that.
Hi,
How are you?
fine.
Yeah, looking to upgrade the cameras that we had, they were installed in 2009. When we did the upgrades to the building, it's an analog system. Now we go digital. The analog system that we had, the server or the component, the DVR that records is tired. The servers are acting up. I keep losing some of the rad out of them. And we're beginning to lose communication with some of the cameras. So the new system will be, I think it's 120 terabytes of storage, and I'm replacing a lot of the cameras where they are. Some of them are going to move around because some of the cameras have been, technology today allows me almost a 180-degree view where.
So what are we watching? Just watching for people coming in that's not supposed to be in, or just watching?
Our use is after.
It's
Recorded, so if we have an issue on the playground, we have a parent act out, and any one of those things, we go back and we can see it and pick up on it.
Have you had to do that a lot?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and it's also, it's a very good deterrent with the kids as well.
Well, I just wanted to say one other thing since I'm up here, that our taxes have gone up so much, and they're going to be going up more if we get everything here. If yes is to everything that you're asking for. Everywhere you look, it's like, this is unsustainable, this is unsustainable. And everyone agrees with it. But there again, here we are needing more money for the school, and we can't pay for it. So what is going to happen? If we vote yes on everything tonight, and that's why I'm here, we just can't, and everybody knows what unsustainable means. So on one hand, you say this, and on the other hand, you say, we need more money.
Well, I'll interpret that as a question about what impact this warrant would have on the tax rate, if there's anybody prepared to speak to that.
Oh, I know what impact it's having on it. I've added everything up. It's just, it's going to be, for one payment, it's going to be over $21,000 for the year, if I read this right. And that's just added on with everything else that's coming up here. I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay, so you're
Okay.
making a statement rather than a question.
Excuse me?
You're making a statement rather than a question.
I already asked my question,
Okay,
okay?
very good.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Article 3? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 3, vote by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Article 3 passes. Which brings us to Article 4, Energy Management Contract, to see if the school district will vote to authorize the school board to enter into a 10-year lease agreement in the amount of $324,445 for the purpose of leasing energy conservation systems, and to raise and appropriate $5,172 for the first year's payment for that purpose. This lease agreement contains an escape clause. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion?
The board moves to accept Article 4 as stated.
Is there a second? Article 4 has been moved and seconded. Is a discussion on Article 4?
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Bonnie Sears, and my question is, I've got a figure written down here that I heard at one of the meetings, that this would save $27,000 a year. Did I write that down right?
Correct, $27,400 per year in energy savings.
Okay, so if it's actually, you know for sure it's going to save this much?
There's a written guarantee that the volume of usage of fuels and kilowatts will go down.
And what is it different we're doing as far as, We still heating the same way?
If you want technical details on the changes, I'll ask John Francis to answer that part of the question. I'll be happy
Oh,
to
I
answer
don't
the
want,
financial
I don't
part.
want it to get too technical, or I won't understand it. Okay.
Okay, Mr. Francis, you have the floor.
What we're recommending, one of the big things is we're gonna change all the lighting.
In the building now, we'll go to LED lighting, which saves a tremendous amount of energy. That's where a big portion is coming from. We're also going to address the building envelope. A lot of times when the buildings are constructed, where the roof deck meets the wall, there's a small gap there. And we're going to spray foam that pole and seal that off. And then the other component we're going to do is transformers. A lot of the older transformers, they inherently use more power. Just, that's the way they were built. The newer ones, they actually come in one for lime green, because they label them green, but they, again, it's saving energy. And then I'm going to upgrade some of my controls in the building, just again, and tightening up what we use for power. Those things will generate that.
And what are we doing with the savings? We're saving this much. Go somewhere, right?
Those savings will generate.
The money for $324,000.
Okay, so, but we're still budgeting for 5,172.
I couldn't get you to net zero. I tried. So in other words, ideally what I always hope to try to do is make it net zero, so it's zero. I'm about $5,000 short on making that annual payment.
And this is going to be for 10 years. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on Article 4? Frank?
Frank McLeod. So, if I'm reading this correctly, we're gonna spend $324,000 to save $270?
No, the savings that'll be generated and the improvements that'll be made by spending the $321,000 will last much longer than the 10-year period. 10 years is how long we're going to finance the project over. So we're going to make an annual payment of $32,000 a year for 10 years to pay for the project. $27,000 will be in energy savings.
Per year.
So the increase, yeah, correct. So the increased cost for the first 10 years is $5,000 per year, less any increase in energy costs because you'll be saving those costs. And after the bond is paid, excuse me, not the bond, after the financing component is paid, the energy improvements will live on, but there will be no more payments.
As fast as technology is moving, that, your number, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. As fast as technology is changing, you're, in that 10-year block, it's a good idea to conserve energy for all of us, but to think that this is saving us money over the long term, I don't see it. Thank you.
Is there further discussion in regard to Article 4? Article 5? No, we're on 4. Article 4. Seeing none, we'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor of Article 4, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Article 4 passes. Article 5, additional educator. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $74,805 for the purpose of having flexibility in the 1100 account of hiring a reading specialist or a regular education teacher if the school board considers it necessary. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion?
The board moves to accept as stated.
Article 5 has been moved. Is there a second? There's a second. So Article 5 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Yes, yes, yes.
I was a little concerned about this one.
Would you please speak right into the mic?
Right like that?
Yeah, or you can push it down a little bit if that's a little helpful to you.
This is quite a bit of money for what they call a reading specialist. And my question is, why do we need a reading specialist? I mean, teachers are very intelligent without having to get a specialist. And I know that they could probably teach a child to read. You know, your grade school kids, it isn't like they got to read a law book. So I just don't understand why we need to spend all this.
Is there somebody in the front who would like to respond to that?
Yeah.
So this has been a board discussion for the past several months with many parents coming to the school board asking for the, is this on? Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry about that. The past few months, the school board has had meetings where parents and community members have come to the board requesting for a reading specialist. The board has taken feedback. Also, the question around small class sizes has come up as well. So in that warrant article, the board has the flexibility to hire either a reading specialist or a regular education teacher if class sizes get big or there is a need to do so. It doesn't mandate that the board will hire, it just gives them the flexibility that if the need is there, they have the option to either hire a reading specialist or a regular educator.
So at this point, we're a teacher short then? If you're going to hire either one or the other, you're a teacher short somewhere, right?
They are not a teacher short somewhere. They're looking at needs at this point because there has been some flexibility in the population for the past year as far as the need, whether it be an academic need, a behavioral need, or just an influx in one class size. So we're just kind of holding steady because numbers have fluctuated at the end of the school year at times.
Okay, so in other words, this is not, if it's voted in, it's not for sure it's going to be spent.
Yeah, it just gives the board the option to hire as needed, either a regular educator or a reading specialist.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there further discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, we'll bring Article 5. Oh, I'm sorry, come on up.
I just want to, I'm Meredith Flynn. Just want to clarify, you said the board will, the way that I was reading the article is that a reading specialist will be hired unless another teacher is needed. That's, okay. That was the way that it was discussed at the last school board meeting.
At the last school board meeting, when the warrant articles were discussed, the board adopted this language that's in front of you.
So what is the factor that decides whether a reading specialist will be hired if the money is put aside for it?
It's the board's discretion.
And when is that decision made?
Once again, that's the board's discretion.
I think we've talked about this a few times as far as waiting a few months to see what's needed and really analyzing what the class size is and the need. And the board will discuss at the next few meetings where they're going to hire. There's no deadline to when they're deciding that.
The way that it was talked about at the last several school board meetings was that putting it in a warrant article would give the community the opportunity to decide that it would be in the budget for good. And now I hear you saying that it's not going to be up to the community, it's going to be up to the board in the end, even if the community decides to put that money aside.
So it's absolutely a community decision whether or not to provide the funding to the position, but it's ultimately the board's decision whether or not to either hire the position or not, and what position to hire for.
Mr. Kent?
Yeah, good evening. Is this a tenure-eligible person, or a temporary person, an hourly person? What would this person be?
it's intended to be a teacher and all that comes with that. There are obviously laws about tenure, and it would be every year the board has to consider staffing levels, et cetera, when making it, when building a proposed budget. So whether it's a one-year position or it gets included in the following year's proposed budget, or if staffing is reduced or increased even further, that's an annual decision that the board has to deliberate over in terms of staffing sizes, most critical and most significant part of any budget. Did I answer your question?
No.
I'm sorry.
I want to know if this person's going to be here 10 years from now, by committing themselves in the first year and the second year and the third year, and therefore creating a tenure-eligible person who cannot be fired except for cause. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to it. Sir, I understand you're asking me the question about longevity, and I'm not trying to evade the question. I'm really not. I'm trying to be as truthful as possible. It's the question is put forth to add the position into next year's budget, and whether the board chooses to continue with an additional staff member or reduce in any staff member is an annual process.
Does this go away after this year?
I can't answer that question. I'm not trying to avoid it. I can't answer it. It's the board's decision to build a budget every year.
This position is not funded for next year, is that correct?
No position is funded for next year. The board and the community considers, deliberates, builds, and approves a budget every year for the next year. We don't approve multi-year budgets.
You mean none of the teachers are funded for next year?
This is an additional position to the budget that's in front of you. If you're interested in the staffing levels for the proposed budget, that's the last warrant article.
I understand that.
That can certainly, but it would be up to the board in building the following year's budget whether to maintain the same staffing levels that include this new position or not. No position is guaranteed multiple years. People have tenure rights, obviously, but the number of positions in a budget is something the board considers and proposes every year.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, can I address one thing?
Yes.
So this position,
Please identify yourself.
hello? Does it work?
It's like an ice cream cone.
The history of this is that last year we carried enough budget positions for 33 full-time teacher positions in the budget. We did not fill one of those teacher positions this past year. In our budget for this year, what's going to be proposed in Article 7 includes 32 full-time teacher positions, and we provided this as an option so that if the voters here today support having the ability to hire another teacher, we can. But that position has been removed from the budget that was carried last year.
Is there further discussion on Article 5? Appears there is. Yes, sir.
Zach Terrell. The position as described here and the decision of whether or not to make it a general teacher position or a reading specialist, that'll be decided by the board. Does that decision happen in a public session where the community can participate? Or is that an RSA-protected personnel decision that happens in private, not in the public eye?
Mr. Halloran.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Zach, that position, in talking about the position as an FTE, those conversations would be held in public. That would be a public decision. And you would hear in that conversation class sizes. You'd see the chart that you've seen before. In terms of who gets hired in the process, that would be in non-public session because they would be looking at 3 or 4 individuals and speaking about that. But the nomination of the position then would take place in public.
So just to be super clear, the
Sure.
decision of whether or not it's a reading specialist or fills a need based on student population size, that decision would be made in public with opportunity for us to comment and participate.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there further discussion on Article 5? Seeing none, we'll bring Article 5 to a vote. All those in favor of Article 5, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Article 5 passes. Which brings us to Article 6, Fund Balance to Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $50,000 to be added to the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the June 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No amount to be raised from taxation. The school board recommends this article. Is there a motion?
The board moves to accept Article 6 as stated.
Is there a second? Article 6 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on Article 6? Seeing none, we'll bring it to Article 6 to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Article 6 passes. Which brings us to Article 7, operating budget. To see if the district will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $8,974,997 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. This article does not include appropriations contained in special individual articles addressed separately. Is there a motion?
Yes, sir. The board moves that we accept Article 7 as written.
Is there a second? Article 7 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on Article 7? Seeing no discussion, we'll bring Article 7 operating budget to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. Article 7 passes. Which brings us to the end of the meeting, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I just, this is Kelly Legacy's last meeting. She is leaving the board, so I just want to thank her for her years on the board, and wanted to make it known that we appreciate her. So I'd like to have a round of applause for Kelly.
Are there any candidates for school board here, either at the front table on the next week's election or in the audience? Okay. It's good to put faces to names somehow. Well, thank you all for attending. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all for coming.